Hello everyone. Do you use cash when you pay? Do you know somebody else who uses cash? Do you know somebody who uses cryptocurrencies? Do you know somebody who knows what the blockchain is? It doesn't really matter, because if you don't use cash, you won't be using more cash for your payments anyway, and people are using less and less cash payments. However, the European Union is still not on the page of creating a digital currency, because as we know, southern countries, they use a lot more cash than compared to the Nordic countries. So where's the testing ground for all new technologies which are privacy invasive? Well, you guessed it, that's in Sweden. So many technologies, many digital projects have been initially tested in Sweden, and this will not omit the digital currency of the kronan, the E-Kronan. The National Bank has for 2 years now been skissing out ideas about how that might be implemented, how it might function, how it might be accessible for people, and so on. They have still not tried it, and it will probably be functioning along a blockchain principle. Now, if you don't know what a blockchain is, it's a mechanism to keep track of transfers, of keeping records, and whatever. Just for clarification, here's a short bit from a James Corbett video where he just explains it in a very good and simple way.
As long as there has been civilization, there has been the need for secure and accurate record keeping of transactions and events. And since the birth of civilization, there has only been one way to keep those records: a system where a recognized central administrator stores, secures, and updates that ledger. Until now, that is. With the advent of the blockchain, an accurate ledger can now be maintained without a single central point where that information is stored, maintained, or updated. So what does the blockchain record? Well, whatever you want it to, of course. It can be used as a tool for creating smart contracts, or registering land ownership, or creating decentralized cryptocurrencies.
So now that you know what a blockchain is, you understand that it can either be of benefit for anonymity and privacy, or it can be used by a national bank. So of course, to counter all these decentralized currencies which use the blockchain function or mechanism, they would like to create something which is centralized, paid by the taxpayers and used by the central government, which means that of course everything will be tracked. Now, Sweden is a unique example, and why it's a testing ground for all digital innovations is because if we look at the cash example, I think cash use has dropped like 40% from 2010, so now only about like 13% of payments are done in cash. Back in the days, you know, the argument was that cash is for criminals and so on, but that doesn't hold up water anymore, because you know, you have these cryptocurrencies and digital money, and you know, if they can't use this paper money from this country, they will use another. So that's a bad argument. Now, cash is very important, because the less cash there is in a society, the more the banks can charge you for having a credit card, a debit card, you know, MasterCard or Visa, whatever. And as cash use is kind of dropping, it looks like it's gonna head towards that way, where you will have a centralized digital currency. Now, the interesting thing in their report from both 2017 and 18, which I recommend for any Swede listening to read through, or any other EU citizen, because it will be tested in your country too. Maybe Sweden is before your country, but they will just take Sweden as an example, as a pioneer, and other countries are doing this already. So the privacy aspect, you know, let's go straight to that. It says blatantly and, you know, clearly that it will depend on EU regulations. So it doesn't really matter what kind of national e-currency a country might create. It will still be under the, I would say, not supervision, but under the control of the EU regarding its policy and so and so and so. So, you know, why should the EU rush to have sorry for the focus. It's kind of wet and raining outside, so yeah, okay. So why would EU rush to actually create a digital currency where they will have control over the national e-currencies in the future, and, you know, 50 years from that they can just sort of consolidate them all into one currency, and, you know, my kids and my grandkids will never know what cash is, what, you know, paper money is. Just as I remember the days of checks and stuff, you know, wallets, parents having wallets when you were a kid and so on. Those days are gone. So all of this means the elimination of any kind of anonymous transfer. They say that if you buy, for example, a voucher for this potential digital currency, that might be anonymous, but hey, that's not the same as what you can do today. And as I said, in the country, there are many countries in the EU which are still cash-based societies. That might change. The Nordic countries are, you know, first adapters of digital trends and so on. So yeah, 13% cash use, and it will only get less and less. Now what can we do about this? You know, it's one thing to sort of sit there and complain and mention George Orwell and all that stuff, but what you can do is to actively use cash sometimes. You can also be active in and informed on what kind of alternative payments you can use to people, you know, various kind of cryptocurrencies, which is, you know, pretty complicated because the values change so much. It goes up and down, and there are so many, and if you give somebody like one amount and it's worth a cup of coffee today, it might be worth nothing, or a car in 1 year. So it's quite unstable. So I understand that's kind of hard to do, and the cryptocurrencies have proven to be very infiltrated and corrupt. So the only thing one has left is to keep an eye on this. You know, if one is interested, keep using cash for stuff, and just ponder on the idea that, you know, the next generation might not be able to buy a bag of groceries anonymously. I mean, today you have, you know, bank cards, that's traceable, of course, but still, it's a good thing to be able to do that. And you know, farmers who might have, you know, plantations where you can sort of pick something and put money in a box, that won't be anonymous. And they do that because otherwise the government will force them to create a business model out of it, and, you know, do all kind of complicated bureaucracy. So let's say you're driving in Skåne in Sweden, in Österlen, you walk by, or you drive by a apple plant, and you pick some apples in a bag, you put some money in a box, and that's it. It's a pretty cozy thing. It's pretty honest and natural. You know, on the countryside you can buy all sorts of stuff like that. That won't be possible. So it's actually one of the last nails in the coffin for humans to interact with one another and exchange goods anonymously. The arguments, as I said, about criminality and the use of cash, it's so bad because they just use digital currencies, other currencies, whatever, and they are always a step ahead, especially compared to average people like me and you. So we are the ones who will suffer from this. And you see, in the end, people no longer have cash in their pockets. Do you have cash in your pockets? Do you know somebody who has? it's, you know, stores don't even accept cash anymore in some places, even though a shop should accept the national currency. They can make an how do you say, exclusive deal by just informing you with the sign on the door. So let's say it's a small second-hand store, or I don't know, they can just have, you know, only card for payments and whatever. And yeah, so people are just using the comfortable way of paying, and thus destroying the last kind of free based transaction we can have by giving you cash to cash, cash for goods, goods for cash. However, you know, humans are innovative, so even if that would happen, the Orwellian kind of cash, digital cash system, people might still come up with a new value-based system of exchange, you know, either direct trade, or there will be something else. Because I just think about so many things, and just because I already mentioned apple plantations or something like that, you know, they can just scan it. Oops, look, you know, Jonas got too much money on his account over this summer. You know, you need to file a tax, you need to tax that money, you need to, you know, report that to the government. While before he could just have that box and we put cash there, we got some apples or whatever. Interesting stuff. Now I will keep myself updated on this, and I will leave a link to the reports below. You don't have to read them all, you can just go to the conclusion, to the intro, to the places in the report which might interest you. But it doesn't take that long to read them if you have some free time. It's very interesting. If it hasn't happened in your country, it will be there sooner or later, because here it's kind of happening, and people already are adapted to using digital money or digital payments, credit cards and so on, and people are really getting the blood taste for instant transfers. So yeah, we'll see how this develops. Remember that resistance always comes from your individual actions, so take out some cash, go and buy something with that cash, and as always, take care and all the best. Ciao.